For 6 years, I cooked the turkey, ironed the napkins, and set a place for every single person in his family. This year, I walked into the dining room and counted the chairs. 12 people, 11 place settings. The one that was missing was mine. His mother stood at the head of the table in her pearl earrings, smoothing a wrinkle out of the tablecloth. And when she saw me looking, she smiled the way she always smiled. Soft, sweet, like sugar poured over something sharp. For 3 years, she had told me I imagined things, that I was too sensitive, that I read meaning into nothing. Standing there, looking at that empty space where my plate should have been, I finally understood that I had never imagined a single thing. And by the end of that night, so would everyone sitting at that table. But to understand why one missing plate changed everything, you have to know what I had quietly carried for those 6 years. You have to know what was sitting in a drawer upstairs that not one of them knew about. So let me start at the beginning. My name is Maren. I am 38 years old, and for 11 years, I worked as a labor and delivery nurse at a hospital in Hendersonville, North Carolina. I have held hundreds of newborns before their own mothers did. I am good at staying calm when everyone around me is falling apart. I am good at noticing the small things that other people miss, a change in a number, a shift in someone's breathing, the moment a room goes quiet. I married a man named Daniel when I was 31. He was kind and steady, and he loved his family the way you love something you are afraid to lose. That fear is where my story really begins. Before I go on, I want to know where you are listening from tonight. Leave the name of your town in the comments. I read every single one, and something tells me a lot of you already know exactly where this story is going. When Daniel first brought me home to meet his mother, Patricia, she held both my hands in hers and told me I had a kind face. She told me Daniel had finally found someone who could take care of him. I was so eager to be loved by her that I didn't hear what she was actually saying. She wasn't welcoming a daughter. She was hiring a replacement for herself. The family gathered at a lake house out past Lake Lure. It had belonged to Daniel's father, a tall, quiet man named Walter, who passed away 2 years before I met Daniel. That house was the center of everything: birthdays, holidays, lazy summer Sundays. Patricia spoke about it like it was a cathedral. 3 generations of memories under one roof, she would say, her hand pressed to her chest. What she did not say, not once in all those years, was that when Walter died, he left behind a mortgage that had been refinanced twice and nearly $70,000 in debt against that house. The bank was 3 months from taking it. I learned this by accident, 8 months into my marriage. Daniel came home gray in the face with a letter in his hand. His mother had been hiding the notices. She was too proud to tell anyone, too proud to sell, and the family was about to lose the one place that held them together. Daniel and I did not have much, but I had been working double shifts since I was 22, and I had saved carefully my whole life. I had a little over $80,000 in an account my own mother had taught me to build, dollar by dollar, before she passed. I want you to understand the choice I made, because everything after it grows from this single moment. I sat at our kitchen table with Daniel, and I told him we should pay it off. Not lend it, pay it, save the house. He cried. He actually cried, this grown man, with relief. And then he asked me to promise him one thing. He asked me to never tell his mother where the money came from. Her pride, he said, would never survive knowing her son's wife had rescued her. Let her think the bank made an arrangement. Let her keep her dignity. I want to tell you what that money was, because it matters. My mother raised me alone on a teacher's salary in a small house with a leaking roof. She never once let me see her worry about money. But I knew from the way she counted change at the grocery store, from the second job she took cleaning offices at night when she thought I was asleep. When she got sick, She spent the last good year of her life teaching me to do the one thing she never got the chance to do herself. Save. Build something. Have a door you can close that belongs to you. When she passed, that account was not just money. It was every late night she ever worked. It was the only inheritance she had to give, and she gave it so that I would never be at anyone's mercy. And 8 months into my marriage, I handed all of it to a family that had not yet decided whether I was worth keeping. I did it without hesitation, and I would do it again, because that is who my mother raised me to be. But I want you to hold on to that, because it is the thing Patricia never understood about me. She thought I gave because I was weak. The truth is the exact opposite. It takes a strong woman to give away the only safety net she has and tell no one. I just made the mistake of giving it to people who mistook my silence for permission. So that is what we did. I emptied the account my mother left me. I paid off Walter's debts and saved the lake house. When the lawyer drew up the new paperwork, he asked me a simple question. Since the money was mine, free and clear, whose name did I want on the deed? Daniel was at work that afternoon. It was just me and a man in a quiet office with a pen held out across the desk. And I will be honest with you about what went through my mind, because it is the one decision in this whole story I made entirely for myself. I heard my mother's voice. Have a door you can close that belongs to you. She had said it to me 100 times while she was dying, like she was trying to fit a lifetime of warnings into the months she had left. I had just given away every dollar she saved for me. The account was empty. The only thing left of her advice was the chance, in that one moment, to keep my own name on something. So I did. I told the lawyer to put the house in my name alone. I told myself it was just paperwork, that it did not really mean anything, that I would never need it. But somewhere underneath, my mother's daughter knew exactly what she was doing. I kept the door. I just did not tell anyone it was mine. For 6 years, I hosted every holiday in that house I secretly owned, and I served the woman who slowly, sweetly, taught everyone in that family that I did not quite belong. In the early years, I tried so hard it embarrasses me to remember it now. I learned which pie Patricia preferred, and I made it, even though it was not the one I liked. I learned the names of all her church friends and asked after their grandchildren. I drove 90 minutes after a 12-hour shift to help her hang curtains because she said her wrists were bad. I bought her flowers on Walter's birthday because I thought she might be lonely. I wanted so badly to be the daughter she said she had always wanted that I did not notice she only ever wanted an audience. It started small. It always starts small. The first Thanksgiving, I made my grandmother's cornbread dressing. Patricia took one bite, set down her fork, and said to the table, "Isn't it sweet that Maren tried?" Everyone laughed, even me. I laughed because that is what you do when you are new and you want to be liked. I told myself she meant nothing by it. The next year, she rearranged the entire seating chart 20 minutes before dinner so that I ended up at the far corner, next to the children. "You're so good with them, dear," she said. And the grown-up end of the table fills up so fast. Year after year, the comments came. My cooking was always something she had to be brave about. My clothes were always a little much, or a little plain. When I spoke at dinner, she had a way of waiting until I finished, then turning to someone else and continuing as if I had said nothing at all, as if I were furniture that had learned to talk. The cruelest thing about Patricia was that none of it could ever be pointed to. There was never a single sentence you could write down and hold up and say, "Look, this is unkind." It was all in the spaces, the pause before she said my name, the way she introduced me to her church friends as Daniel's wife, never as Maren, the 2 extra seconds she let a compliment hang in the air before she took it back. There was one evening I think about more than the others. My hospital gave me an award that spring for staying through a delivery that nearly went wrong and bringing both mother and baby through it. They held a small dinner. I asked Daniel's family to come. Patricia said she would try, and then she did not come. And neither did anyone else except Daniel and Aunt Ruth. The next week at Sunday dinner, when Daniel mentioned the award, Patricia tilted her head and said, "That's nice, dear. Greg got Employee of the Month at his firm. Did he tell you? They gave him a parking spot." And the conversation moved on to Greg's parking spot. And I sat there with the thing I had worked 11 years for, folded up small inside me. And I said nothing, because by then I had learned that saying something only proved her point about how sensitive I was. But the dismissals were only half of it. The other half was the reaching in. Patricia did not just look down on my life, she tried to run it. When Daniel and I talked, quietly, about whether we were ready to try for a child, somehow Patricia knew within the week. And she had opinions, delivered as concern. A nurse's schedule was no life for a baby, she told me over coffee, stirring slowly. Had I thought about what I would give up? Greg's wife had the right idea, staying home. I had never told her we were trying. Daniel had. He told his mother things about our marriage before he told me how he felt about them, because she had trained him from boyhood to bring everything home to her first. That was the part that frightened me most. It was not that she disliked me. It was that there was no door in my own marriage she could not walk through. When I tried to tell Daniel, he would rub his forehead and say I was reading into it, that his mother loved me in her own way, that she was difficult with everyone. He wasn't cruel when he said it. He believed it. He had spent his whole life learning not to see it, because seeing it would have cost him too much. And so I started to wonder if he was right. I started to wonder if I was the problem, if I really was too sensitive, the way she always said. There were nights I lay awake replaying a dinner, asking myself if I had invented the whole thing. That is what that kind of treatment does to you. It doesn't break you. It just slowly convinces you to stop trusting your own eyes. The turning point came 2 Christmases ago, and it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with her sister. Daniel's Aunt Ruth was the only person in that family who ever looked at me like I was real. She was 81, sharp as a tack, and she did not have the patience for her younger sister's performances. One evening, after Patricia had spent dinner subtly correcting the way I had folded the napkins, Ruth caught my arm in the kitchen. "You see it, don't you?" she said quietly. "Don't let her tell you that you don't." I will never be able to explain what those words did for me. For the first time in years, someone else had seen the same thing I had. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was just the only one at the table willing to admit what was happening. That was the night I stopped wondering and started paying attention. Here is something I have learned from 11 years of nursing. When you finally decide to see clearly, you cannot stop. The pattern was everywhere once I let myself look. I noticed that Patricia had begun talking about the lake house as though it would one day go to Daniel's brother, Greg. Greg was her favorite, and everyone knew it. He had moved to Charlotte, married a woman from a family with a name people recognized, and visited maybe twice a year. But in Patricia's mind, Greg was the one who deserved the house, the legacy, the cathedral. I would hear her on the phone in the next room, talking to her friends. "When the house comes to Gregory," she would say, "we'll finally restore it the way it deserves." She had a whole future planned for a building she did not own and did not know she did not own. I noticed the way she spoke about me to others, because once you start listening, people forget you can hear. At a church luncheon I was not supposed to attend but did, I stood behind a partition and listened to her tell 3 women that Daniel had married down, that I was a nurse, not a professional, that she worried what kind of mother I would make when the time came. I stood there with a paper cup of weak coffee going cold in my hand, and I waited for the rush of hurt that usually came. It did not come. Something had changed in me. Instead, I found myself listening the way I listen to a patient's chart, gathering information, noting the pattern. She told those women that the lake house had been in the family for generations and that she intended to keep it that way, no matter who had married in. One of the women asked if Daniel and his wife might live there one day. Patricia laughed, the soft laugh, and said the house would go to Greg, who understood what it meant to carry a family name. As though I were a tenant who might overstay. That summer, Patricia decided the family should hold a large reunion at the lake house in the fall, the biggest gathering in years. She formed a committee. She put Allison in charge of the guest list and Greg in charge of the catering and her own sister-in-law in charge of the decorations. She gave me one job. She asked me to handle the cleaning before and after. Not the planning, not the welcoming, the cleaning. In the house I owned, for a party I was not truly invited to, she had assigned me the role she always believed was mine. I said yes to that, too. But by then, I was already keeping a record. I went home that day and I did not cry. I sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, and then I went inside and I opened the drawer where the deed had lived for 6 quiet years, and I read my own name on it. And I felt something I had not let myself feel in all that time. Not anger, exactly. Something steadier than anger. I felt sure. That sureness changed how I moved through every dinner after. I stopped trying to win her. I stopped performing. And the strange thing was, the moment I stopped reaching for Patricia's approval, I started to see just how much she had needed me to keep reaching. A woman who is truly the matriarch does not need to remind a room of it every 20 minutes. Patricia did. Every slight, I started to understand, was not strength, it was fear. She had watched her son fall in love with a woman who did not need her, and she had spent 6 years trying to make me small enough to control. But I did not understand the full shape of that fear until I found out about the second group chat. There was a family group chat, the kind every family has, with all the siblings and Patricia and a few cousins. I had always been included in it, mostly so I could be told what to bring. What I did not know until that winter was that there was a second group chat, one without me. I found out because Greg's wife, Allison, made a mistake. She had 2 threads open on her phone at a barbecue, and she sent a message meant for the second one into the family chat by accident. It was a screenshot of something Patricia had written, with 3 laughing emojis underneath and a single line from Allison. She really thinks she's one of us. The screenshot was a message from Patricia. It read, "Don't worry about the seating for the reunion. I'll make sure the help is comfortable in the kitchen, where she's happiest." The help? Allison deleted it 11 seconds later. But I had already seen it. And for once in my life, instead of folding into myself, I did the calm thing. I took a screenshot of my own. Then I started saving everything. I am not proud of how good I became at it. But I had spent 6 years being told I imagined things, and I was done arguing. I was going to stop explaining myself and start keeping a record, because you cannot gaslight someone who has the receipts. Over the next several months, I saved screenshots. I kept the bank letters proving the payoff. I quietly requested a fresh copy of the deed from the county and confirmed, in black and white, that the lake house, the cathedral, the legacy Patricia planned to hand to her golden son, belonged to me and to me alone. I did it the way I do everything at work, methodically, without drama. I bought a plain folder, the kind that costs $1, and I kept it in the trunk of my car, because the trunk of my car was the one place in my life Patricia had never found a way into. Into that folder went the deed, the bank's payoff confirmation with the date and the amount, a printed copy of the screenshot Allison sent by accident, and one more thing I had almost forgotten I owned, A short letter my mother wrote me before she died, the one where she told me, in her own handwriting, to always keep a door that was mine. I am not telling you I had a plan for that folder. I did not. I was not building a case. I was doing something simpler and, I think, more important. After 6 years of being told that what I saw was not real, I was assembling proof, for no one but myself, that it had all been real. Every slight, every sugared insult, every holiday I cooked for people who could not be bothered to set my place, I needed to be able to open a folder and see it, so that on the nights Patricia's voice in my head told me I was imagining things, I could close the folder and know that I was not. I did not have a plan yet. I just had the truth, gathered in one place where no one could tell me it wasn't real. And then the invitation came for Thanksgiving. Patricia called and asked, in her warmest voice, if I would host again this year. The whole family was coming, even Greg and Allison, all the way from Charlotte. "You do it so well, dear," she said. "Nobody hosts like you." I should have felt the trap. I think part of me did. But I said yes, because saying yes was the only thing I knew how to do. I want to be honest with you about what happened next, because this is the part of the story I am least proud of and the most human. For about 3 weeks, I almost let it all go. There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes from being the one who keeps the peace. I was so tired. I looked at everything I had gathered, the screenshots, the deed, the proof, and a voice in my head, a voice that sounded a great deal like Patricia, told me to leave it alone. Burn the records, keep hosting, keep smiling, be the bigger person. Wasn't that what good women did? I told myself a story about how speaking up would tear the family apart, how Daniel would resent me, how I would become exactly the dramatic, difficult woman she always said I was. The night before Thanksgiving, I sat on the edge of our bed with the deed in my lap, and I came within an inch of putting it back in the drawer forever. I called Aunt Ruth that night. I did not plan to. I just needed to hear one voice that had ever seen me clearly. I told her I was thinking of letting it all go, of hosting one more time, smiling one more time, keeping the peace one more time. There was a long silence on the line, and then she said something I have not forgotten. She said, "Maren, you have spent 6 years keeping the peace. Has it ever once been peaceful for you?" I did not have an answer, because it never had. The peace I was protecting had only ever been Patricia's. What finally stopped me was something small. Daniel walked in, saw me holding the paper, and the first thing he said was, "You're not going to make a scene tomorrow, are you?" Not, "What's wrong?" Not, "Are you okay?" Just, "Please don't be difficult." And I realized that I had spent 6 years protecting the dignity of a woman who was teaching my own husband to see me as a problem to be managed. I had given up the savings my mother left me, the last thing I had of her, to save a family that had decided I was the help. I was not going to make a scene. Patricia was wrong about me, the way she had always been wrong about me. I was simply going to stop pretending I didn't know the truth. Thanksgiving came clear and cold. I arrived early, the way I always did, and I cooked all morning. The turkey, the dressing, the pies. I set the table myself, 12 places, one for every person coming. I remember the weight of the good china in my hands. I remember being calm. The family arrived in waves. Greg and Allison, polished and loud. The cousins, Aunt Ruth, who caught my eye and gave me a long, knowing look. And Patricia, last of all, sweeping in with her pearl earrings, taking her place at the head of the table she believed was hers. While I was in the kitchen carving, she rearranged the seating. I came back into the dining room with the platter and I counted, the way nurses count, automatically. 12 people, 11 settings. Mine was gone. She had moved my plate to a small folding tray table set up in the corner by the kitchen door, where the help would be comfortable. The room got quiet in that way rooms do when everyone has noticed something and decided not to. Daniel looked at the tray table. He looked at me. He looked at his mother. And he said nothing. Patricia smiled and lifted her glass. Shall we say grace? Maren, dear, you don't mind, do you? We're just so full this year. Such a happy problem. I set the platter down on the table. I did not raise my voice. I have spent my whole career learning that the quietest voice in the room is usually the one people finally listen to. For a moment, I just stood there, and I let myself feel the weight of it. 6 years of this room, 6 years of carrying the turkey in and being grateful for a corner seat next to the children. 6 years of a woman in pearl earrings deciding, a little more each holiday, exactly how small I was allowed to be. And every single one of those holidays had happened on a floor that belonged to me. I had paid for the chair Patricia was sitting in. I had paid for the table she had just decided I was not good enough to sit at. The folding tray in the corner stood there like an accusation that had finally turned around to face the person who set it up. Before we say grace, I said, I'd like to say something. It won't take long. I reached into my bag, and I took out a single folded paper, and I set it on the table in front of Patricia. That's the deed to this house, I said. Go ahead, read whose name is on it. She did not pick it up. She just looked at it, and then at me, with the first genuinely uncertain expression I had ever seen on her face. So I told them the whole quiet truth I had been carrying for 6 years. That when Walter died, the bank was about to take this house. That the $70,000 in debt would have ended their cathedral. That I had emptied the account my own mother left me to save it. And that I had asked for nothing and said nothing and let Patricia believe she had done it herself to protect her pride. I told them the deed was in my name. That for 6 years, every holiday they spent in this house, every memory Patricia spoke about with her hand on her chest, had happened on a floor I owned. The room was silent. Greg's mouth was open. Allison had gone very still. And then I took out my phone, and I did the only thing I am not entirely sure I should have. I read one message aloud. Just one. The one about the help being comfortable in the kitchen. I read it in a flat, even voice, and then I set the phone down. I've been called dramatic for noticing this for 3 years. I said, I just wanted everyone to hear one time that I was never imagining it. Patricia found her voice. It came out thin. Maren, this is exactly the kind of scene It isn't a scene, Patricia, I said. A scene is loud. I'm being very calm. You taught me how. It was Aunt Ruth who spoke next. She stood, slowly, and looked around the table at her own family. I have watched you do this to that girl for 6 years, she said to her sister, and every one of you let her. She paid for the chair you're sitting in, Patricia. The least you can do is let her sit in it. Daniel was crying. He came around the table, and in front of everyone, he moved my plate from the tray in the corner back to its place at the table. He pulled out the chair and he said, loud enough for the whole room, Mom, Maren saved this family. I should have said that years ago. I'm saying it now. Patricia did not apologize. People like Patricia rarely do. But something in her had cracked. Because the story she had told for 6 years, the story where she was the matriarch and I was the help, had just been read back to her in front of the only audience she cared about. And it wasn't true. It had never been true. And now, everyone knew. I looked at her then, really looked at her. And for the first time, I did not see a woman who hated me. I saw a woman who was afraid. afraid of getting old in a house she could not pay for, afraid that the son she had built her whole identity around had found something steadier than her, afraid that the moment anyone looked closely, they would see that the matriarch had been rescued by the very daughter-in-law she spent years belittling. Her cruelty had never been about me at all. It had been a wall she built so no one would notice how frightened she was. Understanding that did not excuse a single thing she had done, but it let me set it down. You cannot keep carrying anger at someone once you finally see how small their fear made them. I did not gloat. I did not need to. I sat down in my chair, at my place, in my house, and I asked everyone to please pass the dressing before it got cold. We ate Thanksgiving dinner that year. It was quieter than usual, but for the first time in 6 years, I tasted my own food. In the weeks after, the family rearranged itself the way families do after the truth finally gets out. Greg called to apologize, which surprised me. Allison did not, which did not. Patricia and I are not close, and I have stopped pretending we ever will be. But she no longer rearranges the seating when I host. She no longer introduces me as Daniel's wife. The last time I saw her, she said my name, just my name. For her, that was an entire apology, and I let it be one. The big family reunion still happened a few weeks later, the one I had been assigned to clean for. Only this time, I did not arrive with a mop and a list of someone else's instructions. I arrived as what I had been all along, the woman whose name was on the door. I welcomed people in. I put my grandmother's quilt over the back of the good couch, and when an old cousin I had never met asked me how long I had been part of the family, I smiled and told her the truth. I told her I was the one who had kept it standing. Daniel and I are better than we have ever been because he finally chose to see what was in front of him. He has thanked me 100 times for the money. I have told him 100 times that the money was never the point. The point was that for 6 years, I let a house full of people decide I was less than I am because I was afraid that the truth would cost me a family. He has changed in small, real ways. He tells me things now before he tells his mother, and some weeks he does not tell her at all, and the world does not end. He started saying my name first in a room, the way a husband should. One night, months later, he asked me why I had never just told him about the deed all those years. I thought about it for a long time, and I told him the truth, which was that a part of me had been waiting to find out whether he would defend me without it, whether I would ever be worth standing up for, just as I was, with no folded paper to make me matter. He did not have an answer for that, but he held my hand, and he has been answering it every day since, in the way he treats me. That is enough. It is more than I had for 6 years. It cost me the version of the family that needed me to stay quiet. I've decided that version was never worth keeping. I still host holidays at the lake house. I still make my grandmother's dressing, but I set the table differently now. 12 places. And the first one I lay down is my own. If you have ever sat at a table where everyone agreed, without ever saying it, that you didn't quite belong, I want you to hear me. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining it. You have simply been the only one brave enough to see clearly. And the day you stop explaining yourself and start trusting your own eyes is the day you set your own place back at the table where it always belonged. You were never the help. You were the home.